And we have that attitude toward everything. That's not the kind of violence that's being spoken of here. It's not, Yahuwah is not telling us here that we should not and that we cannot defend ourselves and our families and our homes. That's not what's being said here, but that's what we have been told, and many of our people have come to believe that. You see, many of our people have come to believe that. We read from the book of which book was it that we read when she this woman of Yasharal, Yahudith, who they called Judith, who after her husband had died, and forget which king it was, when they wanted to just do whatever they wanted to do against Yasharal. And what she did was she took matters into her hand because the men were scared. And she went over there to visit that king who had camped out against the city, getting ready to tear down the walls and come in. And what did she do? She took his head off in the middle of the night. And she took it back across the border and into Yasharal as a witness to the victory that Yahuwah had given her over the enemy. So Yahuwah does not speak against us protecting ourselves and our people, even though Christianity have dumbed us down into thinking that that's the way we should think, you see. And it's important for us to lose that mindset, because that's exactly what the enemy has put into us. When they took us, brought us into these lands, first thing they did was they told us, be a good slave, and you will spend eternity in heaven. Don't say anything about injustice, and you will get a good reward. That's what they have done to us, family. And we have taken it, hook, line, and sinker. We have taken it. But it's not according to the word of Yahuwah. It's not according to truth. Yahuwah says here in verse 2, from the fruit of the mouth a man eats the good, but the desire of the treacherous is for violence. So when you have somebody going about and all they want is violence, they're always looking for a fight, that's a treacherous person. He who watches, not the same as somebody who is put in a position where they must defend themselves, their family, their household, or whatever the case might be. He who watches over his mouth guards his being, but he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. He who watches over his mouth guards his being. Does that mean that you should never speak? No. Notice the second part, but he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. The one who talks too much, the one who has no filter, the one who does not know how to manage his words comes to ruin. But if you watch over your mouth, you will guard your own life. The being of the lazy one craves, is always hungry, but does not have. While the being of the hard workers are enriched. Again, a lesson about not being lazy and procrastinating. A set-apart one hates a lying word. A set-apart one hates a lying word, but a wrong man is loathsome and comes to shame. So the one who is set apart hates a lying word, is repelled by lies, find lies repulsive. But a wrong man is loathsome and comes to shame. Righteousness watches over him who is perfect in the way, but wrongness overthrows the sinner, the transgressor. Speaks for itself. So when we live set apart unto Yahuwah, that set apartness watches over us, who is perfect in the way, if we are perfect in the way, but wrongness overthrows the transgressor. We live in transgression, we are overthrown by our transgression. There is one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing at all, and one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches. And so there are people who live for riches, live for wealth, and even though they might have stuff, yet they're poor, they're bankrupt, whether it be spiritually, emotionally, they're bankrupt. You see, they're unhappy. You see, there's one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches. And so when money and stuff does not rule over us, when contentment, when we're governed by contentment, then we're satisfied. You see, doesn't mean that wealth is bad, but if that's what you spend your life pursuing, and you'll never be happy, because even after you get it, you won't be happy. You'll always want more, and you'll always be worried as to who's after you. The ransom of a man's life is his riches, but the poor does not hear rebuke. The ransom of a man's life is his riches, but the poor does not hear rebuke. The ransom of a man's life. So a rich man, he has the ability to purchase whatever he wants to purchase in some cases. As far as some things go, you see, he can even pay his own ransom to save his life. But the poor does not hear rebuke. Oftentimes the poor is so consumed with their poverty that they can hear nothing else. They can hear no correction. It's like trying to teach somebody that's hungry. They hear nothing. There is one who makes himself rich yet has none at all, and one who makes himself poor yet has great riches. The ransom of a man's life is his riches, but the poor does not hear rebuke. But the lamp of the wrong is put out. The lamp of the wrong is put out. So you see, family, the wicked will only last but for so long. They spring up in the morning, they're as green grass, but in the evening they wither, they're gathered up, cut down, and put in the fire. It doesn't matter how it might seem the rich is flourishing, the wicked is flourishing. Not the rich per se, but the wicked is flourishing. His day is only but a drop in a bucket. By pride comes only strife, but wisdom is with those who take advice. By pride comes only strife, but wisdom is with those who take advice. So a prideful person who cannot be told anything, who cannot be taught anything, who cannot be corrected. When you have a prideful person, that person will always be striving with somebody. But wisdom is with those who take advice. And so it's always good for us to be willing to hear and to take advice, to learn, to listen, to evaluate, and to assess. Wealth from vanity diminishes. Wealth from vanity diminishes. But he who gathers by hand increases. Wealth from vanity diminishes, but he who gathers by hand increases. We talked about this the other day when we talked about the lottery. You see, money that comes easy goes easy, is basically what's being said. But he who gathers by hand, by hard work, increases. The one who works hard for a thing can appreciate it. The one who does not work for it don't know the value of it, you see. So anything gained lightly, vainly, is usually of no worth to the recipient. But when you have to work for it, then it is of great value because you know the sacrifice that was made. Expectancy, verse 12, expectancy drawn out makes the heart sick, but a longing come true is a tree of life. That's something. Expectancy drawn out make the heart sick, but a longing come true is a tree of life. Put that in terms of us waiting, family. Think about us. Think about our people and what our people have been through, waiting for deliverance. And sometimes, when you've been waiting so long, you can become discouraged. When you've been waiting for deliverance, but yet in your waiting for deliverance, it seems like when you're thinking that, okay, now justice is about to come, but then you look and the next thing you see is not justice, is more injustice. It does make the heart sick. And that's really a true reality for our people. When you've been looking and waiting for deliverance, even with serving Yahuah, because many times, listen, I got to be real and I got to be honest. Okay? Well, at least I got to tell it from my perspective. This is how I feel. You see? Because I look forward to the coming of Yahuah. I look forward to the deliverance of Yahuah. And I know that Yahuah will come. Alright? But sometimes, to be honest, my hope of him coming is that he would be quicker than he is. And that would be one thing, in hoping that he would be quicker than he is. But then as you're hoping and you're seeing the injustice, and then when you look, more injustice gets piled on you, it can make the heart sick sometimes. At least I speak for me. You see? It can make the heart sick sometimes. And that's where I got to refocus. Right? That's where we got to refocus. But the reality is, it can make the heart sick. Yes. Just being sick and tired of being sick and tired. You see, absolutely. We can get worn down. It can make the heart sick sometimes. You see. Expectancy drawn out makes the heart sick, but a longing come true is a tree of life. So even though we might get sick in our waiting, family, when that longing does come true, it will be like a tree of life. You see, a longing come true is a tree of life. All of the frustration and all of the anguish and all of the anger and everything that you have been through and you've felt, when that longing comes through, all of that will dissipate and we will forget it when we see the esteem of Yahuah. His esteem will just simply wash away all those years and decades and hundreds of years of anguish and longing, expectancy. Expectancy drawn out makes the heart sick, but a longing come true is a tree of life. He who despises the word is destroyed. He who despises the dabar of Yahuah is destroyed. Remember now, even when our hearts get sick, never to despise the word of Yahuah, because he who despises the dabar is destroyed. He who despises the instructions of Yahuah is destroyed, but he who fears the command is rewarded. He who fears the command is rewarded. The Torah of the wise is a fountain of life. The instruction of the wise is a fountain of life, turning one away from the snares of death. Again, it is important for us to take wise counsel, family. You see, Yahuah speak to us through others also. Yahuah speak to us through wise counsel, because all wisdom comes from Yahuah, and there is no counsel that can be given separate from his instructions. And so even though that wise counsel might be coming from someone, the only reason why it's wise is because it's predicated upon the word of Yahuah, and that's what make it wise. The Torah of the wise, the instruction of the wise is a fountain of life, turning one away from the snares of death. Verse 15. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the treacherous is hard. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the treacherous is hard. You see, one who has understanding, and you have understanding because wisdom is present. But when you have understanding, you're operating in wisdom, you gain favor. You have Yahuah on your side. The fact that you have wisdom, it means you have Yahuah on your side. And because you're operating in wisdom, you gain favor. But the way of the treacherous is hard. The way of the one who is always plotting. The way of the one who is always conniving. The way of the one who is always sowing discord. And even though he's doing all of this to get ahead, the way of the treacherous is hard. Everyone with insight acts with knowledge, but a fool spreads folly. Everyone with insight, everyone with understanding, everyone with wisdom acts with knowledge, but a fool spreads folly. A messenger that is wrong falls into evil, but a trustworthy envoy is a healing. A messenger that is wrong falls into evil, but a trustworthy envoy is a healing. A lying messenger fall into not evil, but a trustworthy envoy, a trustworthy messenger, a trustworthy servant is a healing. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline, but he who heeds reproof is esteemed. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline, but he who heeds reproof is esteemed. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores. I think it speaks for itself, family. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline. If you can't discipline yourself, you will always be impoverished. If you can't discipline yourself in the way you spend your money, you will be poor. If you can't discipline yourself to gain an education, you will be poor. If you can't discipline yourself to act right on the job, you will be poor. If you can't discipline yourself to manage your finances, you will be poor. If you can't discipline yourself to start your own business, you'll be poor. If you can't discipline yourself, you'll end up in poverty. Poverty and shame are for him who ignores discipline. So the one who ignores discipline, you see, the one who ignores discipline will always end up in poverty and shame. You see, if you ignore the importance of discipline. Discipline is important in all that we do, but he who heeds reproof is esteemed. A desire accomplished, could you turn that off for me, babe? A desire accomplished is sweet to the being, but to turn away from evil is an abomination to fools. A desire accomplished is sweet to the being, but to turn away from evil is an abomination to fools. You see, verse 19 actually go with verse 18. Because when you discipline yourself, in order to accomplish anything, you must be disciplined. And when you are disciplined and you accomplish that which you you started out to do, then it is sweet to the being. You have this sense of accomplishment, and you feel good about yourself, and you feel good about your efforts. But to turn away from evil is an abomination to fools. Fools don't like to turn away from evil. That's an abomination. You can talk to any wicked person on a daily basis, and to do what's right make no sense to them. When you talk to them about doing what's right, they mock you. They laugh at you. You see? It makes no sense to them. And then it is the same ones you see later on in trouble. And now they're looking like a little wet puppy. You see? Face drooping. Surprised. But why should you be surprised? when everything you've done, all you have done is invited the evil by your actions. You see. Now, it says, he who walks with the wise shall be wise, but the companion of fools suffers evil. He who walks with the wise shall be wise, but the companion of fools suffers evil. So who are you walking with? Who do you seek to associate with? Who do you seek to surround yourself with? Do you seek to surround yourself with fools and evildoers, or do you seek to surround yourself and to have fellowship and counsel with somebody who is walking according to the ways of Yahuah, living according to the instructions of Yahuah, living by wisdom? He who walks with the wise shall be wise. They have a saying that goes, and my grandmama always say it, show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. Show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. He who walks with the wise shall be wise. Notice that. He who walks with the wise shall be wise. That means, even if you're a fool, you might start out on the walk as a fool. But if you continue to walk with the wise, even the fool will become wise. The fool remains a fool when the fool chooses to stay with fools. But he who walks with the wise shall become wise. You see, he who walks with the wise shall become wise. But the companion of fools suffers evil. Evil pursues sinners, but good is repaid to the righteous, to the set apart. Evil pursues the sinner, but good is repaid to the righteous. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the transgressor, the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Yes, indeed it is. We talk about reparations, whether or not there should be reparations. I say to you, yes, there should be reparations. The scriptures tells us that there will be reparations. But here's the thing. In the same way that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, meaning then that he's going to give an inheritance to his children and then to their children, he's going to leave an inheritance to them. And by the way, if you do not have it financially to leave an inheritance to your children's children, this inheritance doesn't even have to be a financial inheritance. You see? This doesn't even have to be a financial inheritance. Leaving wisdom to our children is leaving an inheritance to our children and our children's children. We impart wisdom to our children, then guess what? And they are not foolish as to reject it, then it's going to show up in their children. You will see it in your grandchildren, you see, or in the way that they relate to their children, you see. And so there's a microphone open, Mashpaka, if you could check your mics for me. Oh, as a matter of fact, I see it. Okay, now so a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. But even as we speak about leaving an inheritance, so wisdom, we impart wisdom to our children, that's an inheritance, right? We seek to teach our children in the right way. That's leaving an inheritance. But also from a financial perspective, if it is possible, then certainly we should seek to do so. But there's another side to that. Because in even leaving an inheritance to someone, We need to know who it is that we're leaving the inheritance to. You can look at the parable of the talents. You see, if you have a foolish child, it's not wise for you to leave that child no great inheritance, because that inheritance could be their destruction. You see, simply because you have it don't mean, if you do have it, simply because you have it don't mean that you got to give your child everything that they desire. That's a part of the problem with our people. Even though we don't have it like that, somehow we live like we got it like that. And our children actually think we got it like that because we don't teach them real life. Everything they say they want, our people do whatever it takes to give it to them. And they don't know the reality of what's happening. You see, they don't know the reality of what it took for you to give it to them. Can't give them everything they want. Can't give them everything they expect. And you got to know your child also to know whether or not this is a child that you can even give certain things to, or it's one that you will need to withhold certain things from. Because simply to give people stuff don't necessarily mean it's the loving thing to do. Sometimes to withhold is actually the loving thing to do. Yes, indeed, Aki. As Aki Adial says, and it makes them think they are bad parents if they can provide for their children when they have them. They can't provide for their children when they have them. Yes, I realize. Yes, Aki. Yes, go ahead, Aki. I see your flag. Praise his name. Please go ahead, Aki.
Yeah, one problem that we have is enabling. That's not love.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Enabling them in doing wrong. We become enablers to them in many different ways. And it's not love. Some people might think it's love, but it's not love. You see. Loving is doing the hard thing. When the hard thing, even when the hard thing might not be popular, it might not be received, it might not be looked upon as the right thing. You see. There's much food. Much food is in the tillable ground of the poor, but lack of right ruling sweeps it away. Much food is in the tillable ground of the poor, but lack of right ruling sweeps it away. You know, family, you know, it says much food is in the tillable ground of the floor, but lack of right ruling sweeps it away. And there's a lot for us to learn from that. You know, as a people, we have become so dependent on others to do things for us. I know that when we talk like this, some people get offended. But the problem with us as a people is that we have become so dependent on others to do things for us. We're steady looking to others to do things for us. We never take the time to look down at what lies beneath our feet. We never take the time to look around to see what's in our house. We never take the time to assess what it is that we already have, you see. And as a result, somebody else will come in and they will trick us out of our space. They'll talk you out of your space and take it over on, and then once they've talked you out of your space, you look back because the only thing you think is that, man, I live in a pile of mess. I live in a pile of mess. I can't take it here no longer. And you spend your whole time complaining so much that you don't see what it is that you do have. and how it is that you can utilize it and make it work for you. You see. It says there's much food in the tillable ground of the poor. Problem with poor people is that because they spend so much time looking for somebody to bring the meal, and don't realize that the ground that they live on is quite fruitful. That all they got to do is till the ground. You got to see the capability in the ground. Right now you're looking at the ground and you're thinking, man, this ground is hard. Furthermore, I don't see no potatoes down there. Well, how is there going to be a potato when you ain't plant no potato? How you going to reap when you ain't never sowed? But the problem with us is that we want to reap even before we sow. We have become instantaneous. We want instant gratification. And we're not willing to put in the sacrifice. We're not willing to suffer for a little bit. And the fact of the matter is, we might be living on fertile ground. Family, I could take this and I could apply it to so many different things. I could apply it to so many different things. But you know, for most of us, family, I'm going to tell you a little secret, and I was listening to the radio just yesterday about this. I'll tell you, they're talking about, so we live in the hood. We live in the hood. Most of us. I know I live in the hood. Okay? Most black people live in the hood. And even though they've relegated us to these poor, depressed neighborhoods, we could have, a long time ago, if we just took the time to stop and look at what's beneath our feet, we could have a long time ago turned that around to our benefit. I speak as a people. We could have a long time ago turned it around to our benefit. But you know what we have done? We just look at it like we live in the hood, therefore we're going to treat it like the hood, and we're going to keep looking at the suburbs. Man, look at them beautiful houses and those beautiful yards. I can't wait to get out the hood and get into the suburbs. But you know what's happening now? The hood that you live in, the hood that black people are living in, I use the term loosely, black people. But the hoods that we're living in, they've become appealing places to the suburbanites. They're looking forward to coming into the hood. And when they look to coming into the hood, they no longer call it the hood. They don't call it the ghetto. They give them pretty names. That's the first thing. They give it pretty names. Whereas we should have been done that. Give it pretty names. Yes. Urban reconstruction. Yes. Really regentrification. They give it pretty names. And then they work on putting magnets in the midst of it. You know, entertainment centers, shopping centers, hangout spots. And then they slowly and craftily encourage you, if you own something in the hood, to sell it. And then they put you out. And now the place that you've been living in, because we didn't take care of it, so the value is only $20,000. And they give you $15,000 for it, but they got you out. And now all of a sudden, you try to buy your way back in, and now you got to have $200,000, $300,000. All because you did not recognize that you were living on tillable ground. The problem is we have become too dependent on them. We have become dependent on them in order to get anything going. And so, because we don't meet their lending criteria, therefore, we can't do anything for ourselves. We can't start our own businesses. We can't come together and do our own banking as a people, whereby we can do something for ourselves. You see, the key here, family, is that it says that there is much food in the tillable ground. It didn't say the tilled ground. You got to recognize when you're living on tillable ground. And that applies to a whole lot of stuff, family. That applies to a whole lot of stuff. We could apply it to every area of our lives. Tillable ground. If you have some area of your life where you're falling short in, if you begin to look at it as tillable ground rather than polluted ground, then it will make a big difference. Rename that ground first and foremost. Rename it. Instead of looking at it as polluted and unusable, rename it. That's where they start. That's where you start. That's where we got to start. Rename that ground. Whatever the situation is, rename that ground. And then recognize, but first, you got to recognize that it's tillable ground. You recognize it's tillable ground, you rename it. And then you get to work tilling it. And then you can plant your potatoes. But then you got to give the potato time to grow. And then comes harvest. Means then that we're going to have to be patient. We got to get rid of the overnight mindset. You see, we got to get rid of the overnight mindset. If we're instead of giving them our money, playing the lottery, trying to get rich, instead of giving them our money, trying to get rich, how about we take what we're giving them for the lottery and we start some kind of partnership among ourselves? Recognize that we have tillable ground. Recognize that we can do our own banking and we can help ourselves rather than being dependent on them. We say that we're not going to be involved with the government. We're not going to participate in their government. Well, what are you doing to help yourself? What are you doing to govern yourself? What are you doing to further yourself? Do you just say, man, I ain't voting, I ain't doing this, I ain't doing that, and I ain't doing nothing? Nah, that's not a solution either. I'm just going to sit here and wait till Yahuah comes. You know, before we knew him as Yahuah, we were saying that even while the chains was on us. Some of us anyway. Some people tried. But a whole lot of us was saying that even way back when. I'm just going to wait to get mine in the kingdom. And guess what? All them people that said that, they died and gone. It's been a few hundred years. And while they lived, they could have done something. But they didn't recognize that they were standing on tillable ground. You see. Let me go, on YouTube. Tuda Akut. You know what? I've got to get back to YouTube. I got knocked off. Let me get back there. Bear with me just for a second. Bear with me just for a second. I'm trying to get back to the feed on YouTube. Okay. I don't know who posted the question, but could you repost the question, family? Because I just went on. I'm sorry, because I'd gotten knocked off earlier. Or and didn't open the link is what it was. If you could repost that question for me. I'm not sure what the question was, but because I just went back on, I'm not seeing the question. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to continue to, oh wait, let's see. Oh, okay. Comments, no question. Okay. All right. Now, so going back to the text. Let me go here. Okay. Aki, I posted a question in relation to our possibilities due to the captivity and the obstructions we face. Oh, I see, Aki. I missed it. If you could repost it, then that would be great. If you could repost it, that'd be great. So, there's much food in the tillable ground of the poor, but lack of right ruling sweeps it away. Lack of right ruling, lack of good management, right? In the captivity, aren't we removing the obstructions when we want to be independent and build? That's a great question, Aki. You know, in captivity, there is a time in the captivity where Yahuah does not allow us to do anything. In other words, we stay in chains, totally stay in chains to the captor, to the oppressor. And that's where you cannot do anything. You're totally on his time. Totally. You have no option. He come and he wake you up when it's time for you to get up, and it's not time you want to get up, but when he wants you to get up, he comes and he wake you up. And he marches you back to bed. We have experienced that in the captivity. What's interesting, when we study the book of, we call it now, we study the book of Baruch, I believe it is, and some other of those writings. Yahuah speaks about, and even in the book of Ashdras, I believe, Yahuah talk about our time in captivity, how there would be a time of hardship, but then there comes a time in the captivity where he lightens the burden, right? And the same thing, we saw the same thing for Yasharal in Babylon. So in Babylon, and even in the Assyrian captivity, the captivity of Ashur, we see, family, where while the people were in captivity, initially in the captivity, they were not allowed to do anything. They were totally at the behest of their captor. But then it came a point in the captivity where Yahuah lightened the burden. And that's where, even though they weren't free, they had the ability to do certain things. Right? Daniel, for example. Daniel led his people. The people were freed to some extent. They weren't totally freed, but they were freed to some extent. They built their communities, their own communities. They built their own businesses, you see. They weren't dependent on the system so much. But we can say, well, we can take a position and say, and Daniel could have taken a position and say, well, you know what, I'm in captivity. I've got to make this thing hurt as much as I can make it hurt. No, that's actually, there is something wrong with that. Yahuah don't intend for us to hurt ourselves. When we get to a point where we feel like we got to inflict our own pain, it means that we have something going on. Something is not right. It shouldn't naturally be in us to inflict pain to ourselves. It should naturally be in us to try to get out of the pain. But if we feel as if we've got to inflict pain to ourselves, it might be that we're carrying guilt that we probably shouldn't be carrying it to the extent that we're carrying it. And now we're feeling like, well, Yahuah not torturing me enough. I got to torture myself some more. I got to limit myself some more because he's not limiting me enough. You see, when Yahuah wants you limited, he's going to limit you. But if he lift the bonds a little bit where you have some freedom to do some things in captivity, then that's his doing also. And so we can use wisdom in this captivity, you see, where we're not so dependent on others. Listen, family, it's the same mindset that follows our people in this captivity when it comes to injustice. Many of our people feel as if we should not speak up against injustice because, after all, we're in captivity. So encourage them to beat us down some more. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be talking about the wickedness that they're doing. If anything, if we're going to say anything, tell them, beat me some more. I deserve it. No, there's something wrong with that. Mean that we have been so scarred, we have been so damaged, that we're like a woman in an abusive relationship that wants the attention of the abusive man, and she will do anything to get his attention, even if it means that the more she gets his attention is the more he's going to whip her, beat her down.
All right, give it to him.
You see. Yeah, so Aki said, I can understand it on an individual basis, but we're still very much under the curse when looking at our inability to come together and build economically. Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm not saying that we're going to flourish as a nation, but individually, we can do something to make a difference. And when I say individually, still to some extent as a group, but not. We'll never be able to function as a nation in captivity because this is not our nation. It's not going to happen. They're not going to let us. But still, on a small scale, we don't have to be as dependent. You see, yes, as groups, not as a nation, but as groups, we can still help ourselves in a way that we're not so dependent on them. You see. But as a people, we don't think like that. You see. If they don't tell us move, we don't think we should move or we can move, even when there is no chain on us. We're like the elephant that have been trained for the circus. And the way they train the elephant for the circus is they put this big ball on his leg and keep him in one place for a long time. Put some spurs around his ankle. And every time he goes too far with that chain, the ball pulls him back. And when he goes to a certain extent, the spikes dig into his ankle. And when that has happened to him enough, it comes a point where the ringmaster can then take the ball off of his leg, put him in the middle of the circus, have him doing all kinds of stuff, this great big elephant that can just knock down the whole tent, the whole circus. But he don't realize that he no longer have the ball on his ankle. The only reason why he don't knock down the circus and get out is because he don't realize he no longer have the ball on his ankle. But every once in a while you have one elephant who realized that the ball is no longer there. And what he do? He trample his way through that circus, and before you know it, he's going down the road. You see? Now we got to be a little smarter than that elephant. Because when we realize that the ball is no longer on our ankle, we don't go crazy and go on a rampage. They're going to shoot you. Nope. You don't go crazy and start running down the road shouting, I'm free, free at last, free at last. No, you don't do that because you are not free at last. You don't do that. No, you become strategic. You become strategic. You don't go shouting free at last. Hey, no pun intended. No pun intended, and I'm sorry. I don't mean any. No disrespect to Dr. Martin Luther King, but I want to use the analogy. Dr. Martin Luther King would be like that elephant that realized that I got a little wiggle room.
Aki,
Yes, Aki.
real quick, because you just brought up Martin Luther King, and this thought just jumped in my head. I think we have all the evidence now, in hindsight now, to realize that the good doctor realized his mistakes with integration and how he was thinking about integration
Indeed.
Shortly before they assassinated him.
Mm-hmm.
And the group economics that he wanted to practice was in a false model. It was in a model that it couldn't be achieved in.
Right.
And I think in the comparisons to what Malcolm X was saying, he saw also some of the benefits of us coming together as a people, not on a point to hate. And the contrast is so interesting because Martin Luther King started out in love and found out his mistake later.
Yes.
Malcolm X started out in hate and found his mistake later.
Yes.
And I think we have to have a good mix of not hating people,
Right.
not hating people, but definitely hating the system.
Yes.
And be able to see where we can build for us and for our children and for our environments, for our neighborhoods, for our people, without sacrificing anything for the convenience of white people.
Yes.
That was all I wanted to say. I'll release the mic.
Yes. Great point. Great point, Aki. Great points you just made there, and absolutely on point. That is absolutely true. The way you summed it up. So Martin Luther King, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever, but following the analogy of the elephant, and like Aki said, Martin Luther King realized his mistake right before they killed him. You see, Martin Luther King became what he should be to his people. But COINTELPRO says, okay, now it's time to take him out because he's too awake. It's time to take him out. So COINTELPRO took him out. But we have got to be strategic. You see, what happened with Martin Luther King was, what happened to Martin Luther King was this. I'm going to read it again. Verse 19. No, not verse 19. It's a little before verse 19. Give me just a second. Could you ask her to bring it in for me? Verse 12. This is what happened to Martin Luther King. Expectancy drawn out makes the heart sick. Martin Luther King's heart became sick because he had an unrealistic expectancy. And it came a point where because his heart got sick, because of this unrealistic expectancy, and he realized that the ball had been loosened from his ankle, but he didn't realize that he wasn't free enough to just go running off down the road as if, he's going to take out everything. He needed to be more strategic. Instead of going on a rampage, he needed to be more strategic. Martin Luther King says, I'm coming to collect that check. You see? But he needed to be more strategic. We've got to be more strategic. So it doesn't mean that we sit because we're in captivity. We sit and do absolutely nothing. It means that we should be disciplined. We have got to be disciplined in all that we do. We've got to be disciplined. I see your flag, Aki. Please go ahead. Aki, praise his name.
Yes, it's something like those Israelites, those real Israelites in the streets.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Indeed. Indeed, Aki. You see? So simply because you have the freedom to go out and make a whole lot of noise and bring a whole lot of attention to yourself, don't mean that you should. You see? But we've got to do meaningful things for our people, to help our people while we await our deliverance. Because just in case we didn't realize it by now, nobody's going to do it for us. And as long as we continue to depend on them, family, I have a son. He started going to kindergarten. And within 2 months of going to kindergarten, this teacher, she was a Jewish lady. He's in kindergarten, family. He's in kindergarten. Listen to this. He's in kindergarten. Within 2 months of being in kindergarten, this lady came to us telling us that we need to see about getting some evaluation for him. They call it an EPA or something. Get a learning disability evaluation for him, because he's not. She was giving him tests. He just started kindergarten. They're giving the kids tests. He just started kindergarten. They're putting stuff on paper, giving them tests, and because he didn't know. Same thing they did in the 60s. And in all fairness, I know that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did a lot of stuff to harm our people, but I'm going to tell you honestly, one of the reasons why I believe a lot of white people don't like Hillary Clinton, why they hate her the way that they do, I'm going to honestly tell you, one of the reasons I think they hate her so much is because of what she did. No, Benghazi, that's one reason, but that's to me, that's just an excuse, you see. It's not really Benghazi. It goes way past Benghazi, way before Benghazi. Because the same thing that they're doing to our kids now, trying to with these tests and then labeling them, they were doing that down in the South. And she went down to the schools down there undercover, pretending just to be somebody looking for a job. And what she did was she exposed the systematic racism that they were practicing with labeling black children in the South. This was back in the 60s, when she was still in college, when she did that. And I believe that racist, hateful people still hold that against her because she made them look bad on that account. And I believe that's one of the things that's fueling their fire. You see? Yeah, probably so. I never seen. Well, of course, all of them really with the whole abortion thing. Absolutely, you know. But I believe it's one of the things that really fuel the fire against her, because and this is the reason why I say this. Leading up to this election, I ran into a lot of white people that were going to vote for Donald Trump. And I've never met one who referred to her by her name. All of them referred to her as a B, with venomous hatred. You see. Now, so and again, I'm just saying that out of I believe that credit must be given where credit is due, and evil must be spoken of where it is present. I believe that, and I don't ignore what somebody do, whether it be good or bad. But what she did when she was in college, a young woman in college, what she did in highlighting that, I don't know, might have been for political reasons. But whatever the case is, I'm glad that she did, because nobody was admitting to it, that they were labeling our children for no good reason. And they're still doing it today, unfortunately. You see? Still doing it today. But that's what they tried to do to my son. Kalab just started to go to kindergarten, and this woman wanted me to take him in for evaluation. I said, no, thank you. You see? Want to label him. We have one son, our oldest son. We didn't know any better at the time, and we allowed them to do that. And you know what they did with him the whole time he was in school? They classified him and say need to be in a special education class. You know what happened in that special education? Well, they wanted to give him Ritalin and stuff. We never took that. But he had the classification. But the whole time he was in a special education class, the majority of those years that he was in school, he had no teacher. There was no special education teacher. And the kids would just sit in the class all day long. They would have substitutes that come in. Sometimes the substitutes wouldn't show up. And when ain't nobody there, then they just get in trouble. And then my son's been suspended from school more than he's been in school. Minimum suspension he would get is 10 days. And he get that a lot. You see? Now, they classified him. They gave him a label and then said that he needed to be in a special education class, but then there's no special education teacher. And then he's supposed to be in an environment that's supposed to so-called help him then. But there's nobody to help him. And then when him and the other kids in this environment who have no supervision go playing around with a fire alarm or playing around in the classroom, you come in there and you say, all right, y'all get 10-day suspension. Now that's a rigged system. So my point here is that if we as a people begin to think differently in a way where we're not so dependent on them to educate our kids, so dependent on them to help us to start a business, so dependent on them for this and for that, so dependent on them even for food, so dependent on them for living, we begin to think differently. If we begin to recognize what's under our feet, the tillable ground that is under our feet, then it would be better for us. You know, there's a story, there's an account in the book of Malachim, the book of Kings, where the prophet Yahuah, he came across this woman, or this woman came seeking for him. Yeah, she came seeking for him because her husband had died. And her husband had borrowed some money. And the person from which the husband borrowed the money had came to collect, and she didn't have the money to give him. And this person was going to take her son, her only son, to work off the debt, which was legal. Okay? But she did not want to give up her only son. Her husband had died, and all she have now is her son. She couldn't afford to give up her son. And so she went looking for the prophet Yahuah. So they call Elijah. She went looking for the prophet Yahuah. And when she found the prophet asked her, "What do you have in your house?" She explained to the prophet what had happened, that her husband had borrowed this money and the husband had died, and now she have no money to repay, and the creditor has come to collect. You see, the creditor came to collect, and the creditor said, "Well, if you don't have the money, I'm going to take your son." So the prophet asked her, "What do you have in your house?" She said, "All I got is a little jar of oil." All I've got is a little jar of oil. The prophet said to her, "Okay, I want you to go, and I want you to get some more empty bottles. If you can't find enough, borrow a few. And I want you to go into your house, you and your son, close the door behind you, and don't stop pouring until all the bottles are filled." And so with that little bottle of oil that she had in her house, once she started pouring, she was able to pour and pour and pour until she poured her way out of debt and into excess. But it all began with the question, what do you have in your house? Again, we've got to recognize what it is that's under our feet. Stop looking at what somebody else have and looking at what we have and how we can use it to change our situation, to better our condition. There is nothing wrong with that. We've got to get out of that mindset where we think that we got to afflict ourselves. Yahuah is not doing it enough. Yahuah is not afflicting us enough. So let me add some more. If you're not going through as much, it's because Yahuah has lightened the burden. And if Yahuah has lightened the burden, then certainly he knows what he's doing, and it's no mistake. So we can't begin to think, "Oh, you know what, it must be a mistake. Let me figure a way how to make this thing hard on me again, harder than it already is." Recognize that Yahuah has lightened the burden. You see. Recognize that Yahuah has lightened the burden. And stop trying to put back on yourself what Yahuah has taken off of you. We have been messed up in that way by Christianity and religion. We're not them Catholics who think that we got to go strip ourselves naked and beat ourselves with some whip with a razor or whatever the case is. We're not no Muslim either. Not all Muslims practice it, but some do, who think that they got to punish themselves. No, that's religion. When Yahuah lightened the burden, give Yahuah praise for lightening the burden, and then take the time to assess your house, to assess the ground that you stand on. Yahuah has lightened the burden. Yahuah has created opportunities. Now, what is it that I need to do? Let me get disciplined and let me start working. Now, in going back down now, we're almost done here in chapter 13, and we're going to stop here at the end of chapter 13. So verse 23 says, "There's much food in the tillable ground of the poor." Interesting. Much food in the tillable ground of the poor. So if the poor had recognized that there is much potential in the ground under his feet, guess what? The poor would not remain poor. But the poor don't realize that the ground is tillable, therefore the poor remain poor. Or the poor might be looking for overnight success, therefore the poor remain poor. Spend so much time searching for overnight success, have no time to see the benefit of what is under your feet and what is in your house. So there's much food in the tillable ground of the poor, but lack of right ruling sweeps it away. Lack of discipline sweeps it away. Lack of the ability to identify it sweeps it away. He who spares his rod hates his son, verse 24. But he who loves him seeks him with discipline. Of course, that don't mean you go about abusing your child simply because the scripture speaks of the rod and correction. I mean, every opportunity you get, you beat them down with the rod. Even the rod should be used wisely. Yahuah uses the rod wisely. And guess what? He also uses the rod sparingly. Some people think that the rod is something that you should use at every opportunity. That's not the way Yahuah does us. That's not the way Yahuah intend for it to be. The rod is not intended to be used frequently. It is intended to be used sparingly. He chastises those whom he loves. Absolutely, Akut. The rod is used sparingly. You look at Yasharal, and when Yasharal act up, look at how long Yahuah give them to get it right before he actually pull out the rod. He begs and plead with them before he actually pull the rod out. The rod is always the last resort. But unfortunately for many of our people, because of our history in slavery, and we don't realize how that still affects us as a people to this day. Because in slavery, the rod, for the wicked, the rod is the first resort. As you discipline your children, ask yourself, is the rod my first resort? And then if you find that the answer is yes, maybe you should ask, am I wicked? Because you see, for the wicked, the rod is the first resort. Just look at the police. Look at the wicked police. When they deal with our people, the rod is the first resort. When they deal with their people, the rod is the very last resort. When Yahuah deals with us, the rod is the last resort. But why do so many of our people why are they so quick when it comes to their children and discipline to grabbing the rod? It's because of how we have been treated. It's something that is passed down. We beat our children like the slave masters beat our forefathers. Because when our forefathers got beat, they came home and beat their children, and their children learned to beat their children in the same way that their daddy beat them, and so on and so forth, and they carry on to this very generation. When I was going to school, when you act up in class, in Jamaica, they have this fruit called guava. It's a tropical fruit. When we were going to school, now the guava tree, it is the stick from the guava tree, it is a very flexible stick. Very flexible. Very strong, very sturdy. It will bend and bend, but it won't break. and it stings. And the teacher would send us out there to pick our own switch. And the thing about a guava switch, the little one hurts and the big one hurts. So you don't know which one to pick. The little one will cut you quicker than the big one, but they both hurt. But they would send us to get a guava switch. And that's what the teacher would use to beat us. And that thing hurt. But where did the teacher get that idea from? Every teacher did it. But where did that teacher get that idea from? The slave master. They got it from the slave master. And they're just doing what they've been taught to do. But it doesn't have to be that way. A whole lot of what we do don't have to be the way it is. We do it because that's the way we have been conditioned. That's right, Aki. Yes, they gave us Jim Crow and drank their Jim Bean. Yeah. Now, so he who spares his rod hates his son. What Yahuah is saying then, he's not saying that the rod is the first resort and that you got to grab the rod at every occasion. No. Disciplining a child comes in many different forms. The rod should always be the last resort. If they become accustomed to the rod will have no more effect. If they become too accustomed to the rod. But you also got to know when to use the rod. The rod is a strategic weapon. Or not weapon, but tool. A strategic tool. You see. The righteous, the set apart, eats to the satisfying of his being, but the stomach of the wrong is lacking. The wrong one is never satisfied, is what Yahuah is saying. Nothing satisfies the wrong one. The set apart one eats until he is satisfied. He recognizes when he's had enough. The set apart one knows how to be content. The wrong one is never content. The wrong one is never satisfied. The wrong one always wants. You know what? My wife's mom and dad beat them with extension cords. That's brutal. I was surprised at that. You see. Indeed. Yes, indeed, I could. So the righteous eats to the satisfying of his being, but the stomach of the wrong is lacking. We got to know when to be satisfied. So here's the thing, family, those few verses there. So number one, we need to understand, we need to recognize what's under our feet. But then also we need to know also when to be satisfied. We need to know, okay, this is not about trying to become greater than the wicked in the land of the wicked. Because the land of the wicked is not our own. This is about sustaining ourselves. It's not about becoming more powerful than the wicked in his own land, because after all, that's not wise. What that's going to do is it's going to create jealousy. It's going to create envy. and it's going to cause problems for us. So it's not about becoming stronger than the wicked in his own country, because guess what? The wicked is not going to wait for you to get stronger than him, even though it's not his country. He stole it. But he's not going to wait for you to get stronger than him. If it looks to him like you're getting too strong, guess what? He's coming after you. And he's going to put you down by all means necessary. You see? So in all that we do, wisdom is important. Discipline. We need to recognize what's under our feet and become more independent. Well, I'm going to stop here for this evening, Mashpaka. It is my hope that what we've covered has been a baraka to you. I don't know if there are any comments or questions before we close out. If so, I'll open the mic to that. Aki, Willie, please go ahead, Aki. Let me unmute your mic. Oh, you got
Shabbat
it.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Aki.
Okay, can y'all hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, great lesson, Aki, like always. And yeah, from all we've been listening to from the scriptures of Mashaly that you've been going over. This may just be a pretty broad question, and I don't know. It was just on my mind, but I just ask as far as Yashara is awakening little by little and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, what is the role of Yashara while we're in captivity? Because I'm like, well, we know we coming into the knowledge of Yahuah. You know, some of us are just coming little by little, but I guess the ultimate thing is what is our role
Mm-hmm.
while we're in captivity, and I guess from just being able to expand on that, just we knowing what we have as well, and knowing our worth, not seeing that we have more leniency and more freedom. Not saying that we're free, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but just knowing that we I guess just clearly what is the role of Yashara?
Yes, I got you, Aki. And of course, I think your question, I think you understand, first and foremost, obedience to the ways of Yahuah, the word of Yahuah. That's first and foremost, right? But from that point, in a day-to-day living kind of sense, what is our role? What's expected of us? How do we go about that, right? And that's what we're dealing with. So we have a responsibility as a people, right, to care for one another. We read the scriptures, we study the scriptures, family. Even if you go to the letters, you go to the book of Acts, you go to the book of Ephesians and writings like that when the people were living in captivity. And what you find about Yasharal when you study history about Yasharal, even in their captivity, you know what they did? They were self-sustaining people. Okay? What they did was they would even in captivity, Yasharal, they would establish themselves to the degree that they didn't have to rely on, once Yahuah lightened the burden, I'm talking about, they established themselves not to take over, not to appear as if they want to take over the land of their captors, but they established themselves in a way where they're helpful to one another, right? So they would do things to ensure that they can be of help to each other, right? So for us as a people in captivity, many of our people out there going through all kinds of stuff, we have got to think from the perspective of what can we do as a people to position ourselves in a way where we can be more helpful to our people, right? How can we help in helping to bring some kind of security for our people? to represent our people, to be unified, and to be there for our people when they need somebody to be there, right? We've got to begin, we've got to think strategically. We want to reach people, right? But how can you reach somebody that's hungry? The book of Mashaly talk about that. How can you reach somebody that's starving? They have needs. Here it is, you come telling them about Yahuah, but at the same time, you can't really show them what Yahuah has done, you see, and will do. So you go out and you speak to them, but then you can do nothing to help their situation physically. You see what I'm saying? And so you give them a word and then you leave them still hungry, but they can go to the church, they can probably go to the Muslim mosque, and they can get some food, they can get some clothes, but we have nothing that we can do to physically help them. Yeah, that might be the case sometime, but it don't have to be the case all the time. And if we begin to think more along the lines of again, considering what it is that's under our feet, yes, and begin to think more strategically, then we can be more effective in reaching and helping our people, you see. But if we only think about it from the perspective of, well, forget the fact that they're hungry, forget the fact that they're homeless, forget the fact that they're freezing, just give them the word and that should be good enough. No, that ain't good enough. Because when you see that when Yahusha came and spoke to the people, even to the poor of Yasharal, because they were living in disobedience, that's why they were living in poverty, what did he do? He fed them. He met their physical needs. But somehow we don't seem to think that that applies, many of us, right, in Yasharal. But it does. It does matter. But the only way we can be effective is if we change our thinking. You see what I'm saying? Is if we change our thinking. That's the only way we can truly be effective. Yahusha didn't just come to them preaching. He came to them helping. You see, physically helping them. And we got to do the same thing. But we got to change our thinking. You know, when it comes to even standing up for people, we got to be able, again, with the wisdom of Yahuah, we got to be able to stand for our people. You see? We have situations, family. There are situations where people are being railroaded by... there's one example. I'm trying to remember it. Can't remember the exact situation now. But I'll give you another example, though. Don't apply to our people, but it happens to our people. And it will happen as time goes on, especially in these days that we're living in. I see your flag, Aki. I'm going to come to you very shortly. I was watching a video last night that somebody posted on Facebook, and it's about this Muslim woman. She went to a Domino's pizza store and ordered pizza. There was a bunch of white folks in there, and she usually go to the store, but she never wore her headdress when she went into the store, but this time she wore it. And when she went into the store before, she never had a problem because they didn't know she was Muslim. Well, this time she wore her headdress and she ordered pizza. So what they did was they made a messed up pizza. She ordered a vegetable pizza. They made a messed up pizza and gave it to her, like a deformed pizza, just a messed up pizza. Gave it to her. She took it and she went home. She didn't realize how it was, but when she got home and saw the pizza, how it looked, it was terrible. So she took it back and she said to them that, the pizza was messed up. She wanted to return it and get a different pie. Well, they started mocking her and laughing at her and things like that, and told her she wasn't getting anything else. That's what she ordered, and that's what she's getting. So what she did was she called corporate. After she called corporate, uh, um, I think she called the next day. Hours later, the police showed up at her house, and the police said that, did you call Pizza Hut corporate line? She said yes. And she began to explain to them what happened. And she said, so they said, did you threaten to bomb the store? She said, no, why would I do that? Well, she's telling them she didn't. So, but as she's telling them she didn't, they put handcuffs on her. And she fell to the floor. They took her to jail, had her locked up for a day and a half, and the only thing they gave her in jail was ham sandwiches. Every time it was time for food, she told them she didn't eat pork, but the only thing they would give her is ham sandwich. Now, so they're showing an interview of her, but they're also showing the person representing her, basically taking. They're now suing. What's the name of that pizza store? I forget the name of it now. They're suing them, and they're suing the police department. My point here is this: that if you mess with a Muslim, if you mess with a Christian, they have a system in place that at least can speak up on behalf of their people. To some degree anyway, and to a large degree, especially if you're Christian. When injustice is done to our people, there's nobody to speak on our behalf. There's no one of us we're not organized in any way whatsoever. And I believe that that's necessary. I believe that we need to start thinking in that way. You see? Yes, absolutely. The scripture says it. But as the awakening comes, and as Yahuah lightened the burden, because that's what's happening. Yahuah is lightening the burden. Okay, Yahuah has lightened the burden. But it don't mean that difficult times won't come. Great persecution will come. And while Yahuah does his work, just like in Babylon, Daniel spoke up on behalf of the people in captivity. When they had problems, they knew who to go to. They would go to Daniel. You read in the book of Daniel, it said that they would come to his house. They had leaders of the communities. People of Yasharal living in Babylon in captivity, they had community leaders. And the community leaders, when you read in the book of Daniel, you get this. They would meet, they would come to Daniel's house for counseling as to how to lead the communities. You see, they weren't a nation, but they were groups. They had leaders of communities, leaders of groups, you see. And so it's important for us to think in that way, because it's not by coincidence that Yahuwah has lightened our burden. And so we can't continue to feel like, no, let me put it back on by all means necessary. You know, so what do we do? Aki, what are we supposed to do? I believe it's necessary for us to think of ourselves as a people, and the fact that we need to be look to ourselves for help and even for protection and defense. You know, that's something else. Our people, many of our people don't think it's wrong for us to even think of defending ourselves. Listen, we're living in vicious times. We're living at a time where right now, especially with the election of Donald Trump, I don't know how many of you see it, but white supremacist groups have become emboldened. Okay, and if necessary, I don't have any fear. I don't feel afraid. What I am prepared to do is to defend myself, and if necessary, to defend my people. That I'm prepared to do, by all means necessary. By all means necessary, that I'm prepared to do. You see, I'm not just gonna cower and sink in a hole. Nah, that's not me. Yahuah didn't make me that way. You see? And if somebody else is that way, so be it. But he didn't make me that way, so I've got to be who he made me to be. You see? That's the bottom line. But we've got to think of ways how to be there for our people. All right? Aki, I hope that helped. We could go deeper with that, but I hope that I, give some example of what I am saying. Let me go to my Aki. Praise his name. Go ahead, Aki. You're welcome, Aki.
Yes, hallelujah. This has absolutely been a great feast. I appreciate it. All praise the Most High. Question is, I heard you actually mentioned something in one of your studies pertaining to Yiddish and Hebrew and how it's married to this, that, and the third. I just wanted to know if it is something that I can follow, that you may have. You can point me in a direction, some book that I may be able to, go in deeper depth of that. Okay. And Mashpaka, what does that mean?
Okay, yes, Aki. Yes, so Mashpaka is family. Mashpaka means family. So when I say Shalom Mashpaka, I'm basically saying Shalom, my family. And concerning resources, it's interesting, Aki, when I talk about the Yiddish. I arrived at those conclusions just from my personal research. Yahuah, it's amazing when Yahuah awaken you. You don't know, it's a puzzle that's being put together, and all of a sudden everything fall in place and you get a picture. But it over time, it would give me little hints here and there, and at the end, to put it all together, I couldn't retrace my steps to kind of tell you. But what now today, what I can do, because I haven't found any books out there that expose this thing the way it should be exposed. But what I did was looking up the history of the language, looking in the dictionary at the word Yid, the word Yiddish, and different things like that. And putting, just doing the footwork, doing the legwork. Yahuah complete the picture for me. I haven't been able, there might be books out there. I haven't found a book that really lay it out. But it's just...
real quick.
Yes.
I know exactly what you mean pertaining to how you can't really explain, or not necessarily explain, but how it came about and how he exposed it.
Yes.
So I follow, and sometimes it just takes you as to look for yourself and research things for yourself.
Yes. Indeed.
Hallelujah.
Indeed. Praise Yahuah. Exactly so, Aki. And it's just amazing how it come about. You can't, it's like you don't know where it started. Yahuah just bring it together. When it's complete, you get it, and it's hard to explain, but you get me. You get me. And that's the way it is. An amazing thing. It's the nature of the awakening. It's just the nature of the awakening. And that's how we know what's being done is Yahuah working. And then from time to time, you see little bits and pieces. Recently, and not recently, but maybe a year or two ago, maybe a year ago, or maybe a little less than that, I came across an article on a website. And as a matter of fact, you know what? I know I have family waiting, but I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to see if I can find that article again, because that article confirmed the things that I I discovered through my search, through my study. It was talking about the Yiddish language. But let me see if I can find that real quick. Give me just a second, family. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to see if I can find this article that I found, I came across not too long ago. Wasn't even looking for it, but I came across this article. It was the closest thing that I've found to the facts. Let me just try this. The origin of oh man, that might not be it. Let me try Yiddish. Just put in Yiddish. Let's see. I don't even know how I came across that article. Now, another thing too I've found, you see these articles here, another thing I've found in research is that their own articles also have clues in them. Their own articles. So if you take the time to even read what they write, you get clues. You get the clues. This is an article about, this is a Jewish article. I've never seen this one before, but this is about where Yiddish came from. And I don't have time to read it right now, but I guarantee you read through these articles and you get clues of the real history. Go to dictionary.com and it tells you about the history of the word Yiddish and so on, and that's very insightful also. But it's just spending a lot of time reading their articles, searching through the history of words, and just a lot of digging, and that's how I came to that knowledge. And not only that, studying history, studying geography, different things like that, the history of the Jews and all that, their the places where they have lived and so on. That's why I say to you, I'll give you an example here real quick. So one of the things you'll hear me say is that Yiddish is a combination of the Abari language and a bunch of European dialects. You've heard me say that in the past, right? Well, watch this. It's the first time I'm seeing this article, but I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to read this part of this article right here, and it's going to show you exactly that. Okay. Let me see something. Let me back up just a little bit. I'm going to show you. Watch this. I'm going to start. Now, of course, we're reading from the pen of the liar, but there's truth in the pen of the liar also. Archaeology supports this part of Weinreich's argument. I'm starting in the middle of nowhere, but what I'm trying to get to is down here based on what I was just looking at, but I'm starting up here. Archaeologists support this part of Weinreich's argument. Befuddled tour guides in Prague. In Prague, watch the different names of the different places we're about to see now. In Prague, struggle to explain why, given the expectation of exclusion of Jews, the city's famous Jewish quarter, Josephav, is so central to the old town. One misguided explanation is that the Jews were given land near the river that was too marshy for the other city inhabitants, prone to flooding and disease bearing miasmas. But Prague's Josephav is not an isolated case, it is typical. Weinreich's point is that exclusion could also be exclusivity. Restrictions also came with designated privileges. In Trier, Mainz, Haykal, these are all different places in Europe. Mainz, Haykal, Cologne, Worms, and more than 100 medieval towns in Central Europe, the Jewish district was both a central and a prime location close to the economic heart of the city. The German bishop Rudiger, granting a charter of the city of Speyer, not a city in Europe, in 1804, in 1084, wrote, I thought that I would increase the glory of our city 1,000-fold if I were to include Jews. So these are all places in Europe, cities in Europe, where the people settled, right? Very important to what I just said, to give the definition that I gave. Weinreich's second argument is equally counterintuitive, though in some places Yiddish and German were mutually understandable. Yeah, no, they're trying to obviously here what they're trying to do is there's obviously this guy is telling you the story of the Yiddish language, and he's basically saying that it's German, and so they can't deny it. So what they say here is, though in some places Yiddish and German were mutually understandable, he assiduously argued that they are different languages. So this guy is telling you that it's the same language. This guy that they're trying to, this is the Jews trying to basically make him look like what he's saying isn't right. First time I'm seeing this article, by the way. But Weinreich's deploy is formidable linguistic artillery to argue, contrariwise, that despite significant variations in spoken and written Yiddish across the expanse of Europe, Western Yiddish, more purely German, Eastern Yiddish, heavily Slavic, Southern Yiddish, with influence from Hungary and the Balkans, Yiddish forms one language and shares one cultural sphere and worldview quite distinct from the surrounding culture. In short, Yiddish and German are different, but all Yiddish is one. So they're twisting this. But my whole point in looking at this, in sharing this, in deciding to read it, is what I said. What I said to you, the definition of Yiddish that I find in studying history, in studying geography, in studying just research, the etymology of the word, what I find is that Yiddish is a combination, a conglomeration of the Abari language mixed with a bunch of European dialects. That's what I find Yiddish to be. And the reason why I say a bunch of European dialects is because the Jews, every place in Europe, across Europe where they settled, they took those dialects and they mixed them in to make this one language, whether it be Germany, whether it be in Central Europe, whether it be in Mainz, whether it be in Cologne, whether it be in Worms, wherever they lived at, they took those dialects and they mixed them all, bundled them up with the Abari language, and that's how they stole our language, and that's how you have Yiddish today. So that's just a brief little example of how my studies led me to that conclusion. And the evidence is out there, and obviously this guy that they're trying to basically make it look like you don't know what he's saying, he's obviously telling the truth about the origin of the language. So that's what this article is about, but they're trying to refute him. Of course, they're trying to protect the lie. But Aki, again, I don't, it's been over a time period of digging and studying, and just Yahuah revealing the truth, is how I came to that. And it's not that I've found a book with it. There might be books out there, but I haven't found it, Aki. Okay, let me go to Aki. Keith is next, I think. Please go ahead, Aki. Aki Keith.
Shabbat shalom, Aki.
Shabbat shalom to you, Aki. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just want you to know I sent you an email.
Okay.
It's about the religious instruction of the Negroes funded by the Library of Congress, and I think you're gonna find this very interesting. So wow. That's all I wanted to say to you.
Tada. I'm gonna look into that. I didn't check my emails this week. It's been every day. I've been long days at work, And so I haven't had a chance to check, but I will, Aki. Tuda Rabba, Tuda. That sounds interesting. We go to Akut Sharon. Please go ahead, Akut.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to you, Akut. Wonderful to hear you.
Yeah, I have to apologize for my voice. I'm getting over the flu. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk or not, but I decided to try it. Hey, was it last Shabbat that you mentioned a movie called The Crown?
Yes.
Okay, I watched that this week.
Okay.
I watched the whole series, yeah. And I was trying to remember, you had made a point about the movie, something that we were watching it for.
Yes, yes. So I was talking about the definition of Christianity when I mentioned that movie. And, often you'll hear me say that as I study the scriptures, the Bible, history, and so on, find the definition that I get of Christianity is that it's ancient Egyptian slash Babylonian pagan sun worship wrapped up in a bunch of ripped out of context scripture verses. And so right then I began to talk about the history of the Bible, and even the Queen Elizabeth celebrating the 400-year anniversary of the King James version of the Bible. And so that whole thing where they the reason why they call themselves the royal family and so on, they say that they are the seed of because they say Jacob, they are the tribe of Israel. And but I was saying that even so, when you watch the movie, so they are the epitome of Christianity, and that's what they want you to believe, and how they want you to see them also as the epitome of Christianity. But even as you watch that series, The Crown, there is one episode in particular where the one queen mother, in her case, she's laying on the bed, her bed, and you look at her bed above her, there is the face of a mighty one. And now, of course, it's made like a Greek mighty one, but all their mighty ones were stolen from Egypt. And then there is, in that same episode, you see the queen sitting on a chair, and right behind her is a red chair, and you have the face of another mighty one in the center of the chair. And my whole point there is that we were talking about Christianity and the people that represent Christianity and what Christianity really is. You look at the people who give you the Bible, and then you look at how they live and the things that they esteem, and so you see that all it is idolatry, pagan idolatry, and the belief in these mighty ones that are no mighty ones at all. So kind of pretty much the point that I was making concerning the crown, the fact that they think that not that they think, but they have sold people on the idea that they have been. If you look at the crown, also it says that they make the point of saying that the queen and the king is not appointed, but is anointed, right? That's one of the point they make in the crown. The king and the queen is not appointed, but is anointed. And so when King what was his name? Which king was he? I forget. Queen Elizabeth's father, when he was getting ready, well, he was dying, but they were showing like flashbacks of him when he was getting ready to be, as they say, coronated, and he had his daughter Queen Elizabeth, doing a mock anointing, of him, and he said that tomorrow, when I am anointed, now I will be, it's like he'll be in the place of God, he become like God to the people, basically. So those were some of the points that I was making, but also to people who still hold dear to Christianity, I wanted to point to that series. And if you watch that series throughout, you'll see the paganism, you'll see the Greek mythology stuff in it. And so if they are supposed to be, they're the bearers of Christianity, and if that's what they're espousing, that's what they're holding up, that's what they're giving esteem to, what does that tell you about Christianity? So that was my point there, Akut.
That is a very good point. That's a very good point.
Praise
What
the
are
Lord.
they holding up with all of the gargoyles
Yes.
and all the idols and all of that paganism?
Yes.
hmm
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for another very deep lesson. I always look forward to putting on my thinking cap when I come to the set apart assembly.
Praise
Um,
Yahuwah.
I had another question about so during this period of end times, we're all waking up all across the board,
Yes.
and we're all at different places in our knowledge and in our seeking the truth. Um, are we all going to be ready in time to be counted worthy? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if I'm asking that right, but
Mm-hmm.
I just find myself gobbling up scripture, always meditating, um, always, and still I have concern that maybe I might not be ready in time.
Now, according to the scriptures, Akud, the elect of Yahuwah, the remnant of the remnant will be. And those who are his elect, as he awaken them, they will be ready. Yahuwah does the awakening and he prepares his people. Now, what Yahuwah does, Yahuwah's word tell us, when that time comes, and please forgive me, but I do not put a particular date on that time because I don't feel confident that I know the date. There are people out there who put dates, uh, but I don't feel confident that I know the date. And I'm gonna tell you why. Based on my study of the scriptures, my study of history, throughout Yasharal's history, you'll find that there have been times where the prophets and the people of Yasharal have felt that the moment is going to be tomorrow. And then tomorrow took another 1,000 years or whatever, you see. Tomorrow just wasn't tomorrow. Um, I know that we're in the time of the end, but I'm careful not to put a timeline on it. One of the things we know from the scriptures is that in the final end, as the final end approaches, that the people of Yahuwah will be severely, severely persecuted. And that's where the 144,000 comes in. Because 144,000 is all that will be left living on the earth when Yahuwah returns. That's what the book of Katsun says. That's oftentimes misrepresented, misunderstood, and misinterpreted. But only 144,000 will be left living of the seed of Yasharal by the time Yahuwah comes. That means that before his coming, there will be a great so-called cleansing by the wicked. And we'll be persecuted even unto death, you see. So it's going to be a terrible time, at least for a time, before his return, as I see in studying the scriptures. But and I know that those of his will be ready. But when exactly will it be? I do not wish to be so uh, bold as to say to put any date. I'll let Yahuwah in his time it will be and it will be known. So that's my approach, Akut.
Well, thanks so much, Aki. I did have one more question. So the Belle and the Dragon, that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so what are we looking for if we pursue looking at that at that movie? What's the lesson there? And
Okay.
and I relinquished the mic.
Yes. So actually, the text, the book, Baal and the Dragon, the whole point of it, what we get from that is basically that Yahuwah is sovereign, and that's really the message in the book of Daniel. And that in the end, the wicked will be defeated, and that Yahuwah's people will triumph. That's really basically what we get. The book, Baal and the Dragon, it again, this is my perception. It gives you a poetic view of what took place with Daniel. It doesn't go into the future prophecies so much in depth. But what it does reassure the people of Yasharal is that all that is done is according to the will of Yahuwah, and that Yahuwah is sovereign, that Yahuwah will triumph. And whereas the book of Daniel, I'll go into more detail. But I believe it's more so a source of encouragement to the people of Yasharal, concerning the days of persecution. And that is, those principles can be applied to any time of persecution. All right. Akud Sharon was next. I think I'd seen a question on the board, but Akud Sharon been waiting for a while. So please go ahead, Akud. No, Akud Sharon was just at the mic. Somebody else was. Let's see. Aki Willie. Go ahead, Aki Willie. And Keith had asked, is it possible that the cleansing has already taken place? When we look at, you're welcome, Dakut, praise Yahuwah, and Tuda for your question and your comments. Is it possible? It's possible. You know why it's possible? Because Yahuwah's timing is not our timing. Possible, but I tend to think that there's a later cleansing that takes place. Because of the context. The context is that people will know his name during the time of the cleansing and will be persecuted for his name's sake. I don't believe for a moment that God is his name. The scriptures tells us, for example, in the book of Yahu, Jeremiah chapter 23, that the people of Yahuwah would they would begin to call upon Baal, and that's what we have been doing for all this time in captivity. So when we were being killed, number one, we weren't being killed because of the name of JC or God. We were being killed just because the wicked is wicked. You see, they weren't persecuting us because of Christianity. You see, and Christianity is not it. You see, where they weren't persecuting us because we were serving Yahuwah. So I believe that the persecution spoken of is actually yet to come. Is what I believe. Yes. Yep. So they would call us unbelievers, and whatever else, and animals and everything else, and use that as reason to kill us. But the reality is, it doesn't line up with the scriptures. The kind of persecution that I believe is yet to come. Aki Willie, please go ahead, Aki.
Yes, Aki. When I was chatting on the board with Aki Franklin. This is random, of course, but I think this might go hand in hand with Praise's name, what he was talking about with the Hebrew being Yiddish and stuff. For me, when I see these Hebrew Israelite camps, and they know, well, I guess I'm specifically speaking about the leadership, when they know that Abarim is the language and Abarim is who we are actually and not Hebrew. It makes me think that that they have some type of hidden agenda or something, because for some reason it just seemed like, to me it just seems like I don't know why I'm stirred up about it, but it just seems like that word Hebrew is just getting thrown out like some candy or something. Like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you are Hebrew. You know, you are the Jews, and it just seems like there's like some type of backlash, but it's just like, okay, well. Oh, I guess the only reason why I feel that way is because since we're learning and we're understanding that, okay, yeah, we are Abari, I guess singular as a person, and also Abarim, but we also know that Abari is our language and not Hebrew. So it's like, okay, well, how come your leadership? Okay, you know about Yahuah. Okay, good, I got it. But how come if the leadership does know that Abari is what we're attached to, and not, I guess, what some white man would say, okay, well, here, black people, yes, here you go, here's the cake of Hebrew right here, here's that cake that you've been looking for a long time. So I'm like, oh well, okay, well, thank you, because I know for years, for like about about 4 years or so, I've been saying that. I've been like, yeah, I'm a real Jew, I'm a Hebrew and stuff like that, until I came into the knowledge through the scriptures. Like, okay, well, I I can say that I recently let that go, and I'm like, okay, so if a person comes to me saying, okay, yeah, I'm Hebrew or whatnot, I wouldn't be too fast to criticize them, because maybe Yahuwah still needs to get them close to the truth. I'm not criticizing. I'm just thinking about the leadership of these people, and I'm like, leadership of our people,
Yeah.
saying that, hey, no, it's Hebrew, and they might run across a guy like you that's teaching the truth and saying, and they go back to their leadership and say, okay, well, when we look at it in context, and we actually get the I guess the right word is translation or transliteration. I'm not trying to get
Yeah.
them mixed up or anything like that. And we see that when we look at the Abari, we see that, okay, this is what the actual language is, but over here it just says Hebrew. So okay, we see the lie right beside the truth,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, well, so for these camps that continue to just push that, I'm like, okay, it seems like you either are trying to, you might think of this as something that you need to keep hidden, that doesn't need to come out, or you just not getting moved in your ruach by Yahuwah to actually say that, you know what, guys, I stand corrected. We are Abarim. We're not Hebrew. We're not
Yeah.
Israelites. We are Yashar all. When we break it down in the right way, that's what we are. So I'm like I said, it might. I'm not sure if it's a small thing or a big thing. I'm thinking of it as a big thing, because it kind of bothers me when I see them. Like, okay, I see Hebrew Israelites written out somewhere. I'm like, okay, my mind just like crossed that out. I'm like, okay, this right here is just some garbage that was thrown to us by
Yeah.
the Yids. That's what they're, the Yids. And I'm like, okay, well, for Yashar to come into the knowledge that, yes, this is our language, and also this is our bloodline. Um, Yahuwah knows what he's doing. I'm not taking that away from him. He knows what he's doing. It just seems like some of these camps seem like they have some type of hidden or suspect agenda going on, that like, hey, you need to release this information out to your people, or you know that the wrath of Yahuwah will come on you. So that's just where my mind has been. I know it's random, but it was just, every time I see that, every time I see that on the internet and stuff, and I run across it, I'm like, okay, well, you need to get more of a revealing to you of the knowledge of Yahuwah, so you can come around to that. And then I'm not saying whether it's meant or not meant to be, because eventually everybody, the whole world's gonna know who Yahuwah is.
Yes.
Eventually, it's not like he's gonna be hidden forever. It's just slowly leaking out to people, like, okay, well, I left Christianity. Now they think I'm crazy. Now they think I'm in a cult or something. Like,
Yes.
who is Yahuwah? So everybody's gonna know who Yahuwah is, whether they're getting awakened or whether they're just gonna stay asleep. So it's like, okay, well, these leaders that know this, I'm just like, okay, well, it's time for them to get it straight, because I'm just throwing it out there. I know, like I said, it's random, but it was just something that always been stirred up in me. That I was like, why am I so upset when I see this? But hey, I guess things will be revealed over time. And shalom, and I'll release the mic.
Yes, to the key. Well, you know, it is a big thing because truth matters. Truth matters, and anything that's not the truth is a lie, right? Some people know, some people don't know. And those who know, those who to whom it has been shown, they allow pride. We just read about pride in Mashaly chapter 13 and what pride does. Pride won't allow a person to be corrected. And so some people, because of their pride, they choose to stick with it. It's no different than the Christian that you speak to about the you know, the misleadings of Christianity, and they say, well, you know, my grandma, she was she was the usher in church, and she was this in church, and he was that, and whatever the case is, and they couldn't be wrong. How you gonna tell me that this ain't right? You know, some people love the tradition. There might be things about the tradition that they like. Might be the sound of it that they like. Hebrew Israelite, you know. But like Aki Franklin pointed out, how can you one say there is no such thing as a Hebrew Israelite? Bottom line, period. You see, that's a invention by the Yids, invention by the Jews. You see, yes, we are Abari or we are Abarim. Abarim is the plural form, and Abari is the singular form. So the language would be Abari. The people, as a you know, as a body of people, we are Abarim, or as an individual as are Abari, just as the language is named Abari. Because according to the scriptures, that's how people are named. People are named by the language that they speak, you see. It's only the Europeans who later changed that. And now you can have America, but there is no language called America, you see. And that's something new. That's something European. That's how they build falsehood, you see. But, you know, it's just one of them things. Uh, yeah, so you're absolutely on point, Aki. And, you know, it's some of them know and refuse to take heed. No different than the pastors in church who have been shown the error but refuse to turn away for one reason or another. And some of them don't know, and I believe will eventually come to a knowledge of the truth. All right. Well, Mashpaka, let me see. Akut Yolanda said, I believe that many will come into the whole truth. Yup, we just have to keep studying to help those who want the truth absolutely for themselves. So Father Yahuah knows the time, and we have to, where am I at? We have to accept who we are as a people. For those who know the right terms. Indeed, Akut, indeed. Again, tradition is a foothold, and that can be a hard thing to break with. But again, like Akut just pointed out, that those who belong to Yahuah will come to a knowledge of His truth. Yes, yeah. So there's the thing. We speak English because we were oppressed by the English, and they force us to speak their language, right? They named us in their language, and so on and so forth. You know. And we, and but Aki, as Aki said, concerning America, we speak English, but this ain't England. But it tells you who possess America. You see, it tells you the English possess America. You know, the Europeans possess America. All right. Mm-hmm. Yes, and Spanish too, and it did speak Spanish for a little while, at least in some areas. The people who conquered it at different times. You see. All right. Well, Mashpaka, I've held you long, and I want to say once again to the Rabbah for your patience, to each and every one of you. Excuse me, I just feel really tired here too. I wanted to mention earlier my brother who listens in from Jamaica. He was saying, he said Happy Shabbat to all of the family. My wife had showed me earlier. It typed on Facebook. I don't think he's listening now. I don't think, but he might be. I'm not sure. But I just want to convey that to the family. All right. Praise Yahuah. We'll do a key. We'll do. All right. All right. Well, and if Richard, if you're listening, the family says shalom to you. Yes, indeed. And Akut Al Yashba, the family send their love. All right. Once again, Mashpaka, it has been a baraka spending this time with you. We're going to prepare to close out, and Yahuah willing, I'll be seeing you next Shabbat. So we're going to close out in prayer. Yeah, Shadi. No foundational facts tomorrow. Next week, Yahuah willing. Oh, by the way, someone had asked me about Hermes, and I meant to respond, and I forgot. Akid Daniel was telling me about those writings, and I'm familiar with the book, but I've never read the book. And I'd planned on doing that for foundational facts too. Starting that, but a lot we want to do and cover for foundational facts. Still a lot we have to cover, but I'd like for us to get into those writings. Akid Daniel been telling me about it, and so okay, yes. So I haven't read it yet, Akut, but I'm looking forward to. All right. Well, once again, Mashpaka. Yes. Key. Just put the reminder up to write down Yahusha, what they call Joshua 1, chapter 1, 5 through 9. Yes, indeed. And let's keep that in mind. Praise Yahuah. Praise Yahuah. Keeping our eyes on Yahuah. Having a one-track mind for Yahuah. Praise Father. Lela Tub, Aki, Lela Tub. I'm going to close out here in prayer. Father, we thank and praise you for yet another opportunity to assemble in your name and to fellowship in your word and your truth, to be Baruch in your word. Abba Yahuah, we thank and praise you for keeping us. We pray for the family, those who weren't able to join us today, Father, and those of Yasharal scattered wherever we are. Continue to Barak your people. Continue to awaken your people, and may your favor continually be upon us. We ask for special guidance and protection in these times, Yahuah. We pray that you would give us the wisdom to navigate these times, halal huyah. We pray that you would be esteemed, that you would be lifted on high, Father. Pray that you would be with us in the coming week. We pray, Yahuah, that you would watch over our families and keep us protected, that you would bring us together safe once again. We pray for our family who continue to heal. We pray that you would touch our family and bring healing, bring shalom, bring restoration, bring comfort and joy. We pray, Yahuah, that you would just continue to barak our Aki Yaram Yahu, Akut Yolanda, Coot Vernice, and all of our families who may be afflicted in one way or another. We just pray that you would continue to strengthen and to deliver. In Yahusha's name, Amen. Praise Yahuah. Family, may Yahuah barak you and keep you. May Yahuah lift up his face upon you and show favor unto you. May Yahuah cause his face to shine upon you and to give you his shalom. May the name of Yahuah be upon you. Hallelujah. Love and appreciate you all, Mashbaka. And Yahuah willing, I will be seeing you all soon. Shalom. Shalom. Lilitube family.
It's your turn to one day.